Hello, we are Team A and this is our MDP presentation. To start off, I would like to introduce all our team members. We have David, Jessica, Breezy, Jason, Sophie, Ailey, and myself, Nicholas. I have the honor of representing our team inside this video. So we're going to talk about three different topics which are our favorite topics from the MDP course until now. These are business ethics, negotiations, and corporate social responsibility, also known as CSR. We are beginning with the topic of business ethics. There are many moral dilemmas and ethical ideologies involved in ethics which make morals subjective. Morals are subjective to culture and personal beliefs as well as an individual's upbringing. The first type of ideology we're going to examine is egoism. This is where people only look out for their own interests in an every man for himself type of approach. Utilitarianism is the next ideology we're going to examine, and it involves working in the best interests of everybody and working for the collective good. This means that the outcome that benefits the most people is the most favorable outcome. Relativism is the next topic we're going to examine, and it is when morals are relative to the standards held by the culture of the country you stay in. It is subjective to perception and your surroundings. Lastly, we're going to talk about deontologism, that states that the method and intent behind the method is important rather than the final outcome. Ethics are very important in business because ethics are expected of large corporations and companies in the form of corporate social responsibility, also known as CSR. There are legal regulations on CSR for companies that dictate that companies are required to have some level of corporate social responsibility. Types of corporate social responsibility include social, economic, and environmental. Fines are imposed on companies that pollute too much or that have too much emissions. Companies are encouraged to protect the environment and biodiversity. Here I would like to say that companies that protect the environment and biodiversity are an example of positive externalities, while companies that pollute too much or that have too much emissions are negative externalities. This is where we can connect what we learn in MDP with other lessons and more specifically economics. The social side is that business may be expected to try to be helpful in impacting on the social affairs of the country, such as helping to eliminate poverty. The economic side is that businesses are expected to try their best to contribute to the economy and look out for their shareholders' interests. Some people would argue that companies should also look out for the interests of their shareholders in general and their local community as well. CSR does not necessarily make the company a good company. Do not confuse this. CSR is good for a company's reputation as it is expected by consumers and by the public in general, as well as the government. It could be said that everyone is responsible for looking after the environment, including businesses. Those in charge of businesses can't predict what is best for society, and so some people say CSR is a problem for the government. Now, after talking about CSR and business ethics, that are two topics that are very connected, we will move on to our next topic, negotiations. Negotiations is a process where each party involved aims to gain an advantage for themselves by the end of the process. Ideally, negotiations aim to end at a compromise between the two sides involved, but unfortunately, this is not always the case. Experience is extremely vital in negotiations. Another important characteristic of negotiators is taking risks by doing so by posing threats in a disciplined and organized fashion. Also, it is very important while negotiating to be diplomatic. There are two main approaches one can take when negotiating. The first one is distributive negotiations, wanting it all, more or less a good cop or bad cop situation. The second type is integrative negotiations, investing options for mutual gains and focusing on common interests rather than positions. Thank you very much for listening to us.